once you've made the commitment to begin flight training, you've got an important decision to make. Which pilot's license are you going to go for? For the beginning pilot, there are two options: the sport license and the private pilot license. In a few minutes, I'll explain the differences between the two. Now, it's important to remember that once you begin flight training, you really don't have to know which license you're going to go for right away. As a matter of fact, the training material between the sport license and the private pilot license are so similar, you really don't have to make a decision which license you want until you're almost completely finished with your training. Well, as promised, let's go and highlight some of the major differences between the sport and private pilot license. We'll start with the sport license. Introduced in 2004, the sport license was created for the recreational pilot. It's a standalone license and no additional pilot license ratings may be added to it. Sport pilots are allowed one passenger and are restricted to two-seat aircraft with a maximum takeoff weight of 1,320 pounds. Sport pilots are limited to daytime VFR flying below 10,000 feet. VFR stands for Visual Flight Rules, simply meaning that you navigate the aircraft visually and not solely by the use of the instruments. In general terms, you can't fly in the clouds. One huge benefit of the sport license that makes it so attractive is the fact that no medical certificate is required to be a sport pilot. This is a big factor for people to consider with medical conditions that would otherwise be prevented from flying. Another benefit to achieving a sport license is that the FAA only requires a 20-hour minimum of flight training to achieve the license itself. Now, let's take a moment to discuss that 20-hour minimum. Flight training takes time, patience, and a serious commitment from you. It's actually very rare that anyone achieves their sport pilot license in 20 hours. So when you're budgeting for this, you really want to build in about 35 to 40 hours into your budget. Remember, the 20-hour minimum is only a government minimum, so be sure to plan for that when you're putting your budget together. Now let's take a look at the private pilot license. The private pilot license is the go-to license for new pilots that want to keep their aviation options open. Once a private pilot, you can always add an instrument rating, get your commercial license, or even start training in multi-engine aircraft. There are no size limitations to the aircraft you can fly, although some type ratings or specific aircraft training are required for most large airplanes. Private pilots can fly VFR during the daytime and at night. Additionally, there is no 10,000-foot altitude restriction, as there is with the sport license. A first, second, or third-class medical certificate is required. Local DMEs, or designated medical examiners, can be found through the FAA website. The FAA minimum time requirement for achieving your private license is 40 hours. But it's important to remember that nationally, most new private pilots average between 50 and 60 hours by the end of their training. Now let's take a few minutes and talk about the medical certificate. Now, if you're on any prescription medications or you have any medical conditions, either now or in the recent past, the FAA wants to know about it. So it's really very important that you do your homework before you go to your medical exam. We encourage everyone to go to FAA.gov to make sure that whatever conditions or prescription medications you may be on or have taken are not cause for denial of your medical certificate. Remember, once you're denied your medical certificate, it can be very, very difficult to get it. So do your homework beforehand. Well, so far we've covered choosing a flight school and choosing the right pilot's license for you. Now let's talk about getting started once you've decided to pull the trigger.